Montana is one of those places that looks almost too good to be real. You see the mountains, the rivers, the forests, the enormous stretches of land where you can drive for miles without seeing a traffic jam, a skyscraper, or somebody yelling at you because you took too long to turn at a red light. And then you start thinking, maybe I should just move to Montana. And you're not alone. Montana has experienced substantial population growth in recent years. Between 2020 and 2024, the state's population increased by about 56,000 people, with migration playing a major role. Its labor force also reached a record high during that period. But here's the problem. A lot of people aren't moving to Montana. They're moving to the Montana they saw on Instagram. And those are two very different things. Because the Montana you see in a beautiful drone shot doesn't show you the cost of housing, the distance to the nearest hospital, the insurance bill on that beautiful house surrounded by trees, or what happens when you need a contractor and discover that everybody in town is already booked for the next 3 months. So before you sell your house, pack your truck, and announce to everybody on Facebook that you're escaping civilization, there are some things you should know. Let's get into it.
Number 10. Montana is not one lifestyle. When people say they want to move to Montana, they usually have a very specific picture in their head. Mountains, cabins, fishing, snow, wildlife, a little town with a brewery downtown and a coffee shop where everybody somehow knows your name. But Montana is huge, and the experience can change dramatically depending on where you actually live. Western Montana is where much of the postcard imagery comes from. Places around Bozeman, Missoula, Whitefish, Kalispell, and the Bitterroot Valley offer mountains, recreation, tourism, and rapidly developing communities. Then you have eastern and central Montana, where the landscape, economy, and pace of life can feel completely different. You can find cheaper property in some of these areas, but you may also be trading mountain town convenience for longer drives, fewer services, and much smaller communities. And this is where people make their first mistake. They search for houses in Montana, find something that looks affordable, and assume they're getting the same lifestyle they'd have in Bozeman or Whitefish. You're not. Montana isn't one giant mountain resort. It's an entire state with very different economies, landscapes, and communities. So don't ask, do I want to move to Montana? Ask, which part of Montana can I actually afford, and do I want the lifestyle that comes with it? Because the Montana in your imagination may have absolutely nothing to do with the Montana you can afford.
Number 9. The housing problem is real. This is probably the biggest reality check for anyone moving from a high-cost state. Montana can look affordable when you're comparing it with places like California or Seattle, but that doesn't automatically mean Montana is cheap. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median value of owner-occupied homes in Montana was about $375,800 based on 2020 through 2024 data, while median gross rent was about $1,081. And statewide numbers can hide what is happening in the most desirable communities. A house near a major outdoor destination, a growing city, or a popular tourist area can carry a very different price tag from a house several hours away. This creates an interesting problem. Montana needs workers, but some of the workers needed to keep local businesses running can't necessarily afford to live near those businesses. And the state's own labor data reflects how tight the labor market has become. In December 2025, Montana had approximately 23,000 job openings with a job opening rate of 4.1% compared with 3.9% nationally. So yes, there are jobs. The problem is whether the paycheck and the housing market are compatible. If you're arriving with a remote salary from a major city, Montana may suddenly look very affordable. If you're moving there and planning to find a local job after you arrive, do the math first. Don't just ask what houses cost. Ask, what do people in my profession actually earn here? That's the number that matters.
Number 8. Rural living comes with a maintenance department. This is where the Montana dream starts becoming a responsibility. You find the perfect property, 5 acres, a beautiful view, no neighbors for miles. The listing says something like private country living. Sounds incredible until you realize the property also comes with a well, septic system, propane, private roads, fences, snow removal, drainage issues, and approximately 47 things that can break without warning. In a city, you call somebody. In rural Montana, somebody might be an hour away, and they might already be working on somebody else's furnace. That beautiful private road, you may be responsible for maintaining it. That well, you need to know its condition and water situation. That septic system, it isn't connected to some magical underground city sewer system. And that propane tank, it needs to be filled. This is why buying rural property requires a completely different mindset. You're not simply buying a house, you're buying infrastructure that happens to include a house. Before closing, investigate the well, septic system, road maintenance, heating source, internet availability, drainage, fencing, and winter access, because nothing destroys the romance of country living faster than discovering your dream property needs a $15,000 repair immediately after you move in.
Number 7. The outdoors can become inconvenient. Montana's greatest selling point is also one of its biggest lifestyle adjustments. The outdoors are everywhere. That's fantastic, until you realize that far from everything means exactly what it sounds like. Need groceries? Drive. Need a specialist? Drive farther. Need an airport? Probably drive. Want a restaurant that isn't currently serving burgers, steak, or pizza? Good luck. And this isn't necessarily a criticism. For some people, this is exactly why they want Montana. But if you're used to having 10 grocery stores, 5 pharmacies, and a dozen restaurants within 15 minutes, rural Montana can feel like another planet. The key question isn't, can I live without convenience? It's, how much convenience am I actually willing to give up? Because there's a huge difference between wanting solitude and wanting solitude while still expecting Amazon, Uber Eats, and a plumber to arrive immediately. You can absolutely have a quieter lifestyle in Montana, but you may have to pay for it with time. Number 6. Wildlife isn't just scenery. This is one of those things that sounds amazing until you're dealing with it at 2 a.m. Montana's wildlife is spectacular. Elk, moose, deer, bears, bighorn sheep, and plenty of other animals that don't care that you have somewhere to be at 7 in the morning. Wildlife can become a practical issue when you live near forests, open land, or migration corridors. It can affect driving, gardening, pets, garbage storage, fencing, and even where you leave food. And then there's the obvious one, your vehicle. A deer doesn't care how much you paid for it. You can be driving along at night, admiring the scenery, and suddenly find yourself negotiating with several hundred pounds of animal that has absolutely no interest in your insurance deductible. The solution isn't to avoid Montana's wildlife, it's to respect it. Learn the local risks, slow down around dawn and dusk, secure garbage, protect pets and livestock, and understand the wildlife rules in your area. The animals were there before you. They're not going to rearrange their schedules because you bought a house nearby. Number 5. No general sales tax doesn't mean everything is cheap. Montana's lack of a general statewide sales tax is obviously attractive, and if you're coming from a state with high sales taxes, that's a legitimate financial advantage. But don't make the mistake of turning one tax advantage into a complete cost of living strategy. You still have housing costs, property taxes, income taxes, fuel, insurance, vehicle expenses, utilities, and all the other costs associated with living in a large, relatively rural state. The better way to think about Montana's tax situation is no general sales tax can help, but it doesn't magically make Montana inexpensive. This matters particularly if you're moving there because you saw some video claiming you can buy expensive things in Montana and avoid taxes elsewhere. That is not a universal loophole. States can have rules regarding residence, vehicle registration, use taxes, and transactions involving property purchased elsewhere. So if your entire relocation strategy depends on exploiting a tax loophole, talk to a qualified tax professional before you start making expensive purchases. Don't build a $500,000 financial strategy around something you learned from a comment section. Number 4. Remote work isn't automatically easy. Montana looks like the perfect remote work destination. Imagine it. Laptop on the desk, mountains outside the window, coffee beside you. No commute, no traffic, just you and nature. Sounds perfect, except your internet connection may not be impressed by the scenery. Montana has made major investments in expanding broadband access, but connectivity can still vary significantly depending on where you live.
And that's the important distinction. Internet availability at the town level does not necessarily mean excellent internet at your specific address. A property can be advertised as having internet, while the actual service may not meet your work requirements. So if your income depends on Zoom calls, cloud software, uploading video, accessing large files, or maintaining a stable VPN connection, don't simply ask the realtor, "Does this house have internet?" Ask, "What provider serves this exact address? What speeds are actually available? Are there data caps? What technology is being used? And how reliable is it during severe weather?" Run a speed test if possible. Talk to neighbors. Check the provider. Because there is a major difference between having internet and having internet you can trust with your paycheck.
Number 3. Your career options depend heavily on your industry. Montana's economy isn't weak. In fact, the state's labor market has shown strong demand. Montana's Department of Labor and Industry reported nearly 2 job openings for every unemployed person in 2024, while average wages reached more than $60,000. And some sectors are performing particularly well. Construction, for example, supported more than 39,000 jobs in 2024, with average annual wages around $71,250, above the statewide average. Healthcare, construction, professional services, and skilled trades can offer real opportunities. But here's the catch. A strong labor market doesn't mean every career has an equally strong market. If your profession is concentrated in large metropolitan areas, your options may become much narrower once you leave Montana's larger population centers. That's why you shouldn't move first and figure out your career later. Do the reverse. Research your profession. Find actual employers. Look at actual salaries. Check how many positions are available. Then compare those numbers with housing. Montana can be a fantastic place to build a career, but you need to make sure your career fits Montana, not just your Pinterest board. Number 2, that beautiful forest property may scare your insurance company. Here's something people often forget when house hunting. You look at a property surrounded by trees and think, wow, privacy. An insurance company may look at the same property and think, wildfire exposure. Montana has been dealing with increasing wildfire risk, and state insurance officials have warned about rising insurance costs and the challenges facing properties in high-risk areas. One state insurance publication reported that more than half of Montana properties were vulnerable to catastrophic wildfire damage. That doesn't mean every house surrounded by trees is uninsurable. It means you need to investigate before buying. Look at the roof. Look at the siding. Look at vegetation around the house. Look at road access. Look at water availability. Look at the distance to emergency services. And most importantly, get the insurance quote before you make the purchase. Don't fall in love with a $400,000 house and discover afterward that the insurance situation makes the monthly payment completely different from what you expected. The same forest that makes your property beautiful can also make it more expensive to protect.
Number 1, Montana's biggest luxury might be something you can't buy. And finally, the biggest thing you need to understand before moving to Montana is this: convenience is not guaranteed. Montana has a serious workforce demand problem. In 2025, state officials reported that there were nearly 2 jobs available for every unemployed person, and the state continues to identify sectors with chronic worker shortages. That sounds like an excellent situation if you're looking for work. But there's another side to it. A shortage of workers can mean fewer available services. The contractor you need may be booked. The mechanic may have a waiting list. The child care provider may have no openings. The specialist you need may be in another city. And the person who can repair your furnace may be extremely good at what they do, but also extremely busy. This is where Montana's community culture becomes important. In a small town, relationships matter. Recommendations matter. Knowing your neighbors matters. People help each other, and that's one of the beautiful things about smaller communities. But it also means you can't necessarily approach Montana like a giant anonymous city where you can replace every service provider with a different company 5 minutes later. Sometimes there is no second company 5 minutes away. There may be one, and they're booked. So, should you move to Montana? Absolutely, if the lifestyle actually matches what you want, if you value open space over convenience, if you enjoy outdoor recreation, if you don't mind driving, if you're financially prepared, if you can handle property maintenance, if your career works in the local economy or you already have reliable remote income, and if you've researched the specific town rather than simply falling in love with Montana as an idea. Because that's the biggest lesson here. Don't move to Montana because Montana looks beautiful. Move because you've researched the life you're actually going to live there. The house, the job, the insurance, the internet, the roads, the healthcare, the taxes, the weather, the wildlife, the distance to everything, and, most importantly, whether you can afford the lifestyle after the Instagram filter comes off. Montana can absolutely deliver the quiet life, the open space, and the outdoor adventure that people dream about. But the people who thrive there aren't necessarily the ones looking for paradise. They're the ones who understand the trade-offs. And if you're willing to make those trade-offs, Montana might not be the mistake you were warned about. It might actually be exactly what you were looking for. Thanks for watching, and if you're considering moving to another state, make sure you check out the next video before you start packing that moving truck.